Welcome to Radio Intentional Decisions and the program series Global Consciousness. And today I'm here with two special guests. One of them you may have been listening to before when we have had those conversations, and it's Michael Cillian. And we also have Daniel Matalon. Matalon sounds
pretty good.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Welcome, warm welcome.
Thank you.
Great to have you here. And we're here, of course, of some reason. And what is that reason?
Most obvious is that you're wearing a cloak, and so am I.
It's not a cloak. It's like a capability cape.
Even better.
Even better. So the idea is that there are plenty of those, actually, but a lot of people use the victim hoodie just because they haven't realized that there are capability capes.
So let's put these two concepts out there.
Mm-hmm.
So we have something called a victim hoodie, and we have a capability cloak.
Capability cape.
Cape.
Yeah.
Cape. It's the capability part that we can
Yeah, probably.
It's the distinction between the victim and the capability. Is that what you're trying to say?
Yeah, that's right. And the thing is that a lot of the ideas that we have been taught in the Western world is that everything is happening from the outside, and we're supposed to be managing it, or in the best of worlds we're like preparing ourselves to meet the future. But at some point you might realize that the future is something we create.
That's interesting. I've never thought of the future as something that's served up to us, but I can see how you can frame it that way. Right? I mean, I look at it differently from a sense of the fact that almost all of our conversations are about our history or our choices in one way or another, right? And a lot of the history conversations are about who's at fault.
Yeah, and that's the victim hoodie, victim hoodie.
Right.
So the idea here is that whose fault, that doesn't really apply to the future if you want the future to be bright.
Well, this is a sticky problem, right? Because history is a factor. It's just maybe not as much of a factor as we seem to emphasize, right? Like most of our conversation is arguing over history and who's at fault. But some of that needs to be examined because we want to learn from history. So it's not zero.
No. The consequences are interesting, but separating them from having whose fault it is, I would say it's a distinction that is what I want to emphasize here is that the consequences are of interest.
Yeah.
But why does it have to be anyone's fault?
Yeah. Well, I mean, this is really the question is, what is responsibility? Because usually when you hear these word responsibility tossed around, people are looking at who's responsible, which is another cover for who's at fault.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
And what they're really talking about is accountability.
Yes.
Not responsibility. And accountability, that's important too. But if we need to know which one we're talking about when we use the word.
Yeah, we could also redefine responsibility as being able to respond.
Right. Responsibility.
Yeah. Oh, you said it so nice.
Responsibility.
Yeah, that's right.
Agency.
To do. It's easy to say. I mean, let's face it, because a lot of responsibility is to accept what's unacceptable sometimes, and also to accept that it's my response, regardless of what was presented to me. I mean, people are victims of things that happen. They are actual victims of crime. They are victims of inflicted pain. They are victims of that.
In
right?
some sense.
But then how do you take, like one woman I know who was left on the side of the road with two kids, completely homeless, and 3 years later she's transformed into something of an international player, and the woman next to her maybe has gone into drugs and suicide. Like what is that accounts for that difference is really the big question of my life.
But probably she had to leave the victim behind. Probably. I'm not saying because I don't know the story.
I can't speak for her because she's not here, but I think she would agree with what you just said, right? And so the question in your work, Michael's work, mine, of how do we get to that place of no matter what's happened, how do we exercise the best choice?
Yeah.
Seems to me like what's in common about our various
Yeah.
conversations. Yeah.
So and
Yeah.
and welcome also Michael. Michael, yes, your words are often in terms of the future. What do you think about the past then?
The past, yeah, we must learn from the past, but we mustn't turn it into the eternal blame game. I blame you, and I do vengeance on you, and do you blame me, and you do vengeance on me forever and ever. And now it's everyone's fault, so we can we can just relax because we have so much history to fall back upon. So we don't even like to do, we don't even need to do new acts of trauma on each other because we have all the trauma we need in our backpack already. If we don't leave it behind, and that's the thing. We have to leave the trauma behind, and I've been thinking and hearing people talk about it before, but this fall, this October, I listened to this fantastic series called Trolls Under the Bridge with Evan McMullen about how we have been perpetuating trauma for thousands of years, and super fascinating. You have to go really deep into it, but if you're interested in trauma, he's like onto maybe the best clue we have about trauma. Where does it come from? Why do we keep spreading it forward, shuffling before us?
Yeah, but at some level, we are a product of all the choices we have made up until now, both as a person and as a society and so on. But that is
and if I may,
yeah,
as a species.
as a species, that's definitely. And at the same time, we're not longer, not further far from a new version of ourselves or a new version of anything than another choice.
We agree.
Yeah, so that's the interesting thing with choices, and when you make a choice, it doesn't say you have to stick with that choice for the rest of your life. You can always make a new one.
Or what if your existing habit was done by choice? That's a choice too, right?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah,
I wouldn't want to make up everything new every day.
No, that's right. There are a lot of choices we make subconsciously or unconscious, and a lot of people define choice as, okay, do you choose a blue pen or a red pen? But what if there are like millions of other choices present? And I guess there are words for this, and we have been talking about this concept of choice. It's actually, you have to broaden the mind to another level of causality, which is outside not only what materia present to us. My intent is setting the scene for the future as well as for the past, I guess. We can't go back and check, but probably when you loosen a trauma, for instance, you probably lose up also previous versions of yourself. So, for instance, if something happened when I was a kid and it was a trauma or even an experience which I've been carrying on, so if I find a way to unleash that energy which has been bound, I probably also unleash it in all the previous versions of myself.
Just kind of like getting some sickness out of your body.
Yeah, and yeah. You can call it sickness, but you don't have to define it actually as being.
Right. I'm not trying to be judgmental. I'm just saying some imbalance or something.
An energy that has been stuck or in.
Makes sense. Makes sense. You would you be interested in how I put choice into the definition of wealth?
Definitely. It's a fantastic question. What should I say? Yes or no? I go for a yes. I go for a yes.
I vote for no. No.
Let's do something else. Let's make another choice.
Let's make it. No. Let us hear. Bring it on.
So Michael and I would think you would agree as well, but I know Michael and I have already discussed that in one way or another, we're all, I'd say those of us who are looking to make life better, if we have a chance to do that, we're all playing the world game. The world game is the opposite of the war game, right? Buckminster Fuller's world game. And how he defined wealth, first of all, I shorten it to survival over time. He said your standard of living times how many days forward you can sustain that standard of living is your real store of wealth, which your money is only a part of that, right? And so if you look at it as survival over time, and then you say, well, what if you have bare survival handled? You can't call it survival anymore. So what's the difference between mere survival and a higher standard of living is the amount, and I mean amount, like quantity,
Mm-hmm.
of choice that you have, right? Like if I have more money in my pocket,
Yeah,
suddenly
that's
I
interesting.
can choose where to go to dinner.
I call
right?
that resources, but that's another word for the same thing. Mm.
And I distinguish it from resources because I think that wealth is made by humans, not by what we think of as resources.
No.
It's how humans use those resources.
Yes. A
right?
resource could also be for me a mental level
Absolutely,
or
human resource. I agree with you on all these things. It's just my focus
Yeah,
is
yeah,
on
yeah, I
the
understand,
choice
I
part,
understand.
so people can see their own agency from that. And so, therefore, if what I just kind of worked backwards from about survival over time, and that if it's survival had a survival plus choice over time, then anything you do to create choice has created wealth.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes you get to monetize that. Sometimes you don't necessarily monetize. Sometimes you build the wealth for somebody else. Sometimes you build it for yourself. But as long as every day you're creating more choice, you're creating more wealth, and some of that has to rub off on you.
Yeah. So when you're talking about this wealth, is it also how should I say it? Is it something that is applicable for all people at all time? Is it present in every moment?
Is it a universal truth? Let's say?
Yeah, that's what I'm looking for here. Actually, I think that you really put the words in my mouth. So, for instance, when I talk about choice, if choice is, if I believe, for instance, that there is always a choice, and if that is true at any level, actually not all levels, but at any level, then the world is more than we have been taught. It's more than materia.
Yes, I fully agree with that, and I also interpret that as that we have more available to us at any given moment than we are capable of seeing, even with the highest intention of seeing.
Even with the capability cape on.
And even with the capability cape on. I mean, the mere asking of what does it take to build more wealth under this definition. I think that the mere capability of making choice that you just pointed out is responsibility. But I think the quantity of choices, as well as the quality of choices we have, that's wealth. Because if you want to make more wealth...
There is a time definition that was used by the Egyptians, which was called kairos. Have you heard of the concept?
No.
It's like Chronos. That's the
I've heard
the normal way we think of time. It's like first thing first, and then the second, and so on.
Right.
It's like a chronological event-based idea. That's the time that most people in the Western world believe is the only time that is existing. And there could be other time definitions, and
Yes.
the Egyptians worked with I don't know how many, but they had plenty of them. Even we have actually different time aspects. One is eternity, for instance, which is maybe not graspable, or even maybe we're not capable of even think of that concept. But kairos is like a possibility zone which goes around where you are right now, both in time and space, or I don't even think they denominate it as time and space. It's more like a possibility zone.
Yes. I want to give a shout out. I didn't quite catch the name that you were referring to, but I wanted to give a shout out to the time guy who you'd love listening to. His name is John Coyle. He's a friend of mine who helps people understand Kairos time and Chronos time and neuroscience by looking at how we look at these aspects of time. He's a former Olympic skater, Olympic silver medalist, and so he understands it from a sports perspective as well, athletic performance. And it's a fascinating look at that, because if you can manufacture more time, or the experience of more time, which is what John talks about, well, that expands your choices dramatically.
Definitely. And the thing is, when you say it like this, I understand that we're actually talking the same language. We just use different words. Because time is made by man. The chronos is definitely man-made. And so when you past that concept. For instance, if when I went to school, you had like 1 hour of math, and then you had 1 hour of handicrafts, and then you had 1 hour of sports, and then you had 1 hour of English, say. You never combined them because they were sequential. So first you had one thing, and then you had another. They didn't even combine them like you could have had English on when you did the sports, and you could have had maths when working with the wood and stuff like that. So the idea of time as something that is limited and sequential and chronicle is extremely limiting. So if you get past that idea, wow.
So I've asked this question: is there enough?
No, we haven't asked the question. Should we ask the question?
We could do that.
Mm-hmm.
We could. We could absolutely do that. There's probably nothing harder to grasp than is there enough time?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if there's one thing that people have of uniformity around that expression, it's around that. Even though everybody who answers it, you've heard me say before we're on this conversation, answers it in a completely unique way. So let's actually demonstrate that here. So let me ask you, gentlemen, do you think that there's enough?
Yes, I do.
Yes, I do.
You think that there's enough?
Yes, of many concepts. Time is one.
Okay. So let me ask you then, if there is enough, how come not everybody has access to it?
I believe that this is something that is... I mean, I can only speak of my own experience. I can't speak of your experience or anyone else's experience. So if I speak of my experience, my experience connected to the ideas that I've been working with for quite a while,
sure.
I would say when you realize something, anything, just before you realized it, you hadn't realized it. So if you are aware of something, the second or millisecond before you were aware of it, you were unaware of it. So the thing is that there are plenty of things that we don't see. And we are unaware, we are not able actually to see things that we don't have an concept for or an idea. Even the language we have are limiting us as language is creating the world we live in. And so if we use a terminology which says that there isn't enough, I don't know how many times I've heard people say, I haven't got enough of time. Or I'm stressed out because I don't have time. I don't have time.
Sorry, can't make it before Christmas. I don't have time. I've heard this lots this week or last week.
What about I don't have enough money?
Yeah, a lot of don't have enough of. And the thing is that terminology itself creates. So it creates more of itself. It's like amplifying.
It's a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Yeah, an amplifier of itself. That's my experience, and that's the idea ideas I've been working with, and the more I work with it, the more, how should I say, convinced, or not the right word. Maybe convinced, but convincing someone there is some arguing, blah blah blah.
You become more confident and definite on this response.
Yeah, and even that is not the right word. So it's more like that. It's natural, maybe natural. We can call it natural instead of enough and not enough. It's natural to the world.
Sorry, how is that distinguished from enough, not enough? I didn't get that.
Okay. So instead of putting the words enough or not enough on it, it's like I wouldn't say a law. I would rather say it's natural.
What's a law?
A law is something that men have made up, and law.
There's no universal laws, like there's no gravity.
No, I don't say that. But that's when we use the word law, we use it as it has been for the laws that society.
Right.
The problem with that is that they are man-made and they change. So either the natural laws or the universal laws change, or they don't. I don't know that.
Or maybe our understanding of them does. Like we know different aspects of the theory of relativity now.
Definitely. Right? So gravity, for the concept of gravity, at least for humanity, has been changing vastly over time.
Right. Gravity was whatever it was, but our understanding of it has changed.
Yeah. So that's also means that not only the understanding, maybe the whole concept is different from what we have believed. And again, that goes back to you're almost blind to things you haven't seen yet.
So if I understand you correctly, then you think that there's enough. And when I asked the question of why don't people have access to it, you brought up the recognition and realization that before there is realization, there wasn't realization. So
Yeah.
basically, if I hear you right, you're saying there's not enough realization.
Yeah, until you say it's enough, there is enough, then there ain't enough.
Right.
So that's how I look at it. So
Right.
at the moment you say there is enough, then there is enough.
The moment you say there's enough, then there's enough.
That's what I believe in,
Got it.
actually. Or not only believe in. That's what my experience tells
As
me.
showed you.
And again, do you have to see it to believe it, or do you have to believe it to see it?
Mhm.
Mm.
So what about you, Michael? So you said there's enough, and if I ask you, why doesn't everybody have access to it? What's your answer to that?
Yeah, I forgot my answer, but
You have a new one right now.
yeah, I'm coming up with a new one. But there is certainly enough. But there's like the mindset that I don't have access to it, and there's a distribution problem, and there's like what we call when we come to choice and free will, it's that I can't do that. I don't have access to that, so I can't even choose to try.
So that's
I
something
can.
in
I'm
common
a,
with
like
both of
I
you.
can't even ask for it.
So that's
You're not worthy. That's
I'm not
a
worthy,
that's a
yeah.
common language or a common idea.
Have I ever told you what the most common response to the "is there enough" conversation?
No,
is?
no. I'm so eager to know.
Am I enough?
Okay.
And followed very closely by "are we enough?" And that can extend to a relationship, a company, and a nation. Are we enough? Right? And both of you said that at the moment that you have the realization, or in the case where you don't allow yourself to have the realization, this is really the dividing line between access or not. This is what I hear from what you guys said. I don't know if I understood what you meant to say, but this is what seemed in common with both of you, is that there is an aspect of what we could call consciousness of possibility that begins the process of what other people might call manifestation in some circles.
Maybe.
Some people, right? To go from idea, and you're a project guy, as I'm a project guy.
Yeah.
We love to go from idea to realization. It's not enough to
but
just have an
the thing
idea.
is that when you call it realization, it's more the thing is that why that language tells us that ideas are not real. Manifestation is then maybe better. I don't know. Again.
I think it's kind of like talking about the distinction between alignment and agreement. They sit on a spectrum of each other. They're not
definitely.
the same.
No, I understand.
But they can't work without the other. Like, you're not going to get agreement unless there is alignment,
Yeah.
but alignment doesn't necessarily give you agreement.
No, I understand that. But what I'm looking for here, or what I'm trying to
Insert
distinguish
into the conversation.
is that in the Western world, at least, we have separated the world into an outer world and an inner world.
Well, look, we can go off in this direction of looking at the group of philosophies.
Yeah,
that
we can skip that.
can.
We can, or we can skip it.
Well, no, it's a good reference. I'm just going to say that we're here in this conversation just kind of examining a very difficult set of assertions between those things that are mere ideas and those ideas that actually become consumable.
Yeah. But what I'm looking for here is that coming back to, again, what is possible for us to see and what is possible for us to grasp and what is possible for us to denominate as enough and not enough. Yes?
Not quite, because actually the question that I was putting out about enough, it came to your response that there wasn't enough consciousness, in a sense, of the fact that there is enough. When I asked the question one or another, right?
Yeah, but you...
But I have a follow-up question to that.
Okay.
All of us, all three of us, have been in circles with people who have learned a great deal and are frustrated that they have not expressed that in a way that leads them to the results they want. I've been to the seminar and I've read the books and I've done this and I've done that.
Okay.
And there's an application gap.
Okay, I understand. Okay, so
right? And I
from
would like
theory
to
to practice.
Right,
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah.
And I would like to suggest that
Yeah.
there's a little bit from my worldview,
Mm-hmm.
Western or not,
Mm-hmm.
wherever it's come from, there's a little bit overemphasis on consciousness and
Mhm,
awareness,
mhm,
let's
mhm.
say.
Yeah,
One
yeah.
of my teachers is the guru of awareness, by the way. So I
Mhm.
love awareness and
Mhm,
consciousness,
mhm.
like really. And yet there's not as much literature, not as much culture, not as much discussion about demonstration.
I understand what you're looking for here, because again, when we separate it, we have the problem of theory and practice not being the same.
Which is fine. I don't mind if it's not the same. Like, I have no issue with that.
No,
I just
no.
don't. I think there's not enough. Hold on. There's not enough practice. It's not the gap between the theory
No,
and
no,
practice.
no,
For
okay.
me, the not
No,
enoughness
no,
is
yeah,
not
okay.
enoughness aware. It's not enough practice.
Yeah. I get that.
Because that's where risk
But-
is.
but-
That's
but-
where courage is required. That's
Yeah.
where there is more work we need to
Yeah.
do on building safety for taking risk.
So what I'm suggesting here is that when I say that there is enough, I go from theory to practice.
Yes.
So that is,
Bingo.
so that's what I'm trying
now
to
you
say.
understand why I
Yeah,
want to
yeah,
ask
yeah,
this question
yeah.
of a billion people.
Yes.
Because of this conversation we're having right now.
You're going from theory to practice in the
It is
same.
the most practical of anything I've ever stumbled onto, and believe me, I only stumbled onto this out of exasperation, trying to turn theory into practice. And I was trying to align people to the practice, and I went, "Isn't there enough?"
Yeah.
Because if they realized that there was enough, very,
Ba-kaboom.
which I've gone in detail with Michael about what it involves extraordinary speeding up of time when it comes to human survival as a result of people just going, okay, yeah, that's enough, let's do that, let's agree.
But again, then we have this problem with the guilt game and the blame game, or whatever you call
No,
it.
it's a different conversation. I'm
Yeah,
just expressing you where I came from.
Yeah,
to
yeah,
this
yeah, I
realization.
understand.
I'm not trying to blame those people who couldn't hear me.
But when you say all those stuff, when you said that, I've read all the books and you meet people who say I've gone on to all the seminars and stuff like that. So what they're doing in the same second again, instead of doing it to a practice or going into the practice of it, they go back to
blaming themselves.
Yes.
Yes.
So that's what I was
I hear you.
looking for in the conversation.
I hear you.
So what we right now have been exploring for a while is that saying that there is enough is in itself making it be enough. Or
So I am not experiencing that myself.
no.
No, I am experiencing that is the moment I become capable.
Yes. Thanks.
I agree with that part. And then there's still more work to do.
Definitely.
Right?
That's called life.
Okay.
Yeah.
or just kidding. But that
No,
a lot of people.
There's some truth in what you're saying.
Yes,
There's truth in what you're saying, because there is a certain relaxation that comes to you when you realize that this is a matter of a decision.
Yeah.
And sustaining the decision is the other part, right?
Yeah.
It's fine to just say it once in the moment, but when
Yeah,
you wake
yeah,
up
yeah.
tomorrow when you don't feel like it,
Yeah.
that's another
Yeah,
question.
doubt
right?
is killing what do you call it, trust.
I find that interesting because for me, the biggest tool in that regard to build trust is courage. And the way courage was taught to me was on a flip chart, and it had 3 words. Courage equals commitment plus doubt plus action. And when I show that to people, they go, what do you mean courage is doubt?
Yeah,
is
but
is it courage if there's no doubt?
I can't say that, but courage also, you have to have a fear. Otherwise, courage
Yes, that's
is...
what I mean by doubt.
Yeah.
That's what I mean by
Yes,
doubt.
yes,
right? And so doubt can be our friend if it's purposeful.
Yeah, but...
It can also warn us from things that are dangerous, for sure, right? And it's obviously the trick of life to know the distinction between the two. But this is why I think, like, systematically, as a society, and I don't have the answers to this, but I know the question, is how do we make our economic system, our day-to-day life systems of career safer for the next generation to take risks?
Yes. That's interesting, because risk itself is opportunity also.
Right.
So what I would say here is that okay, we can leave the courage behind right now, because
another conversation.
Yes, another conversation.
Yeah.
But just to not leave it without touching upon it just a little bit more, is
Yeah.
that if you look at fears like something you have to step over, then courage is what it's stepping over them. But you can also lower the problem with the fear.
It's so funny that you reference this as a wall, because one of the breakthrough experiences I've gone through, like walking over coals and stuff, but for me, much more powerful than walking over coals was putting my hand through a piece of wood, which I had no training to do other than in this seminar experience.
Yeah.
And it was a commitment to see the other side, as if the wood didn't even exist. Once I got to that place where the wood was just not there, and my hand was already through it, then is like you said, it's the realization, and then you just do it automatically. It sort of sustains what you were saying before. But I think the things I struggle with are the things where I see the wall really well. When I see beyond the wall, then the wall is not there, and it's not an obstacle.
Yeah. So my experience, like I'm thinking of things, but the most prominent for me right now when we talk about courage and this like manifestation is the thing I've been doing for the last 10 years. I've been so fascinated to coming into the right opportunity in the right event. So I started just say, I want to go to this event. I don't have a ticket. Maybe I know someone there. Maybe I don't. And in this case, I started an experiment. Can I just show up an event and see if I'm in the right place to get in, and even talk to the right people? And I even self-invited me to VIP dinners, and just you just have to know who the right person in the room is. Says, hello, do I belong here? And they most of the time they said, yes, of course, I'll fix you a seat.
Yes.
And
There's a certain stand that you take for your life that when it's that strong and that definite and willing to take that courage, people respond to that automatically, right? It's like the water's part. I mean, it sounds magic, but there's something to do with commitment, creating a ripple effect in the behavior of people around you.
Yeah. So the inner thing I had in my mind is I belong here.
Right.
Before I asked permission.
Right.
Or sometimes I didn't even ask permission. I just thought of myself, I belong here, and I think maybe I projected it, or I don't know, but somehow I projected that I belong here. And sometimes it's misfired, but when there's like high security details and things like that. But most of the time I could like project myself into belonging, and that was a really, really strange experience, like that experience of that courage, like that fearlessness.
It's kind of the opposite, and it's the first time I've ever realized it, but it's the opposite of the am I enough question.
Yeah.
You walk in there going, of course I'm enough. I
Yeah.
belong here. That's exactly the opposite of that.
Yeah.
So let me ask you then, both of you, if we could agree that if there was more awareness that there was enough, then more people would have access to the enough that there is. What do we do about that?
That's an endeavor. Again, I call that life. I also call it like being present, or I also call it engage. I also call it. There are a lot of words, and showing that it's possible.
Yes.
Again, the practice of it.
Yes.
So I believe there are many ways to do it, and at the same time, I would also say, as many ways there are, you have to choose at least one.
Right. What about you, Michael?
What was the
The
question?
question is, if we agree that if more people had awareness that they actually have access to enough, then they would have enough. So what do we do about that? Because that's a not enoughness.
Yeah, like I think coming back to the realization of agency, and the thing I've been talking about, that you can do everything different tomorrow, but you choose not to, because mostly because you're a mammal that lives on habits. You rely on habits to stay alive. all you have muscle memory and behavioral memory and pattern memory of everything you do, and of course that's very comfortable. But if we have to do things differently, we have to like become aware and step outside of that in many cases, and it's totally possible. We can see much of tragedy in the world where there's a flooding, a war or something. People become refugees and they stop doing what they did yesterday because they're forced to. Their home are gone. They can't live there anymore. They can't cook, go to school, go to work, or cook dinner, because none of that exists in a physical place anymore. But we don't have to have everyone suffer for tragedy or catastrophes
Right.
for them to change that agency.
Right.
So you can just wake up some morning. Today I won't go to work. I go to Copenhagen instead and do this and do that, and just see what happens. And when you start, you don't have to like quit your work and do something radical, but you can just start practicing this experience of what happens if I stand here that nobody has done before. Can I climb up on this tree like an adult, and like, would people look at me funny? What happens? And just start experience with that choice and agency making. That's what I've been. That's part of being me. Like,
Right.
and how can I be a role model in this? And I'm talking about like, I have many cases where people have said, you can't do that, you can't dress like that, you can't look like that. Of course, I look, because I've been taking it to my physical experience. I can't show up with I met a minister in Pakistan, and he said, you can't show up in funny clothes there, said one guy. And then Rehan, my friend, said to me, of course he can. He's Captain Future.
That's who he is. Yeah.
So I went to like a dinner with several ministers in Pakistan dressed like in funny clothes, but because in they didn't have suits as well, but the friends with me, you have to have a suit and tie,
Right.
or else you can't meet the minister,
Except you.
except me.
So what did the minister say?
We had no conversation about clothing at all. We talked about other things.
Lots of other things.
About
Yeah.
the future, maybe, or
Yeah.
something more relevant than
Yeah,
clothing.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
So, gentlemen, then when I'm normally having the conversation with somebody about things that there are not enough of, and we ask that question and we come up with solutions and ideas, and when I make this case, let's say, of this definition of wealth that Buckminster Fuller leaves us, what do you think of the idea when I pose that agreement, and I'll ask this question in two ways, that agreement is actually what builds wealth, what builds power, what builds justice, what builds anything we consider a better life on our terms, right? What do you think of that concept, that agreement itself is that measurement of the theory and the practice?
I say, from my point of view, as I understand it, as if I go to my metaphysics as intention, I would say yes.
Do we have enough agreement in the world?
Not in the essence that we need it.
Not at the end. Well, then that's enough, right? Then
Yeah,
that becomes
but
not enough.
my take on this is like, when you, I love your take on agreement, and that's what I tried to explain yesterday as well. That agreement, it's a narrative space. It lives inside our brain. You don't go to a carrot and have to agree with it before you pick it up, or you don't have to agree with the raspberry before you pick it from the bush.
But that's again a Western world concept. If you go to some native people,
They
they
would
will
say
probably
you are, right.
have to have agreement. So that's an idea which is, from my point of view, a worldview.
And so this might be a place we have a distinction about it, but in general,
in general, I
if
would
we
say.
want something new, we need to manufacture more agreement. Which
Yeah,
we
but
can-
not in the essence that we have to put it in word or in writing with the bush.
Well, there's variations of agreements,
Yes,
right? There's
yes, yes.
customs. Even an expectation is
Yeah.
an agreement. I mean, I might think it's an agreement and feel like it's an agreement, and you don't think that it is. It doesn't mean that there isn't an element of agreement in there. There's both agreement and disagreement at the same time in this case, right?
Yeah.
But if we take a norm or a custom or a handshake or a written agreement or electronic, each one gets sort of more detailed as you kind of go up the chain. But on a general basic level, what I'm observing is that this trauma that the Trolls Under the Bridge guy is talking about in a much more general way than I have the capacity to, But where I look at it from this lens is that we come from, some would argue more than this, 70,000 years of war that must be carried in our bodies, in our DNA. It's not just the history of my own choices in my own life, but it's the trauma of all the lives that came before me, right?
Yeah.
So what I observed once I began to think of it this way, I look at a lot of conversation through this lens, and I see elements of conversation, even that there are two peace-loving people having conversation with each other that are creating war with each other and not realizing. This is my fantasy, right? Is I look at two people talking, let's say, on Clubhouse. And there'll be a discussion where a guy will talk for 5 minutes about his life's work. And the next one who speaks goes, I agree with about 90% of that. But I noticed you didn't even say anything about the climate, or something like this, right? And there's no incentive in the conversation to break down what is this guy saying, to give him his due, like to try to find what parts of it I do agree with before we start with the start.
Yeah.
See?
Oh.
There you go, my friend. This is what we call sameness before difference. When you talk about a new habit, Michael, it took me 30 days or so to practice this habit, and it was very difficult. Like, because every time somebody would speak, I would be wanting to say, or I know that, or why I think that's different, or whatever my sources are versus yours, or you went to that seminar, I went to this one, or whatever it was. But it allowed me to eventually have a conversation on Clubhouse with the founder of Stop the Steal. His name is Ali Alexander, who couldn't be further from my thinking and values of anybody I could imagine, of a character that I would meet on Clubhouse. But I was able to understand his truth, even though it wasn't my truth, and that was still a truth, right? And the value that this has given me is, I now see that when I start with my sameness with somebody, my difference still comes up even more distinctly because it's from a foundation of commonality that we respect each other's difference. And this is why I'm going to ask the next question is, and for you to comment from your expertises, which are different angles to this, is the concept of us signing a treaty to this effect to raise agreement up to a level of cultural value, not just a transaction like agreement, like something you write down, but as something we generally swim in as an antidote to war and conflict, right? Because when we say war, we think the opposite is peace. But I think the opposite of war is agreement. And I think that peace is a byproduct of how much agreement we're capable of making, because I could love you and I could also merely tolerate you, and both of them would give me the same result of no incentive for war. And I think we try to jump too fast to the drama of war and peace, and the polarization of that means that the people who are for peace are on one side of the war, and the people who are not for peace are on another side of the war, and they're still having another war. Like the way of the peaceful warrior is still a warrior. You see my point?
Yeah, I see your point. Yeah. So the question here was, again,
is the treaty a mere symbolism, or is it something more substantial than that?
Definitely more substantial.
Please help me understand why you see it that way.
So an agreement, then you're not talking about agreements as writings. You're talking about agreements as mutual understanding and intent.
Intent, exactly. Intent. The treaty just says I'll do my best, like a best efforts guarantee.
No.
I'll do my best for the rest of my life to practice as much agreement as I can over conflict wherever I can to the best of my ability.
No, I would say that's okay. So I understand what you're talking about here. I hope. I would say intent is what is important there. Yeah, and of course we can fail our intents.
You took the words right out of what I have said in the past about this conversation. Is I can fail. In a way, I can't fail at this.
No, you can't fail the intent, but you can fail in
the expression. Absolutely.
Yes.
I could do something tomorrow that interrupts the way you work, and we're out of agreement, and we fix it and get back to agreement.
Yes. And again,
like
when I fail, it's not because I wanted to do it.
Right.
So the intent is how should I say, assurance of me wanting it to happen. And failing is not, for me at least, it's only connected to consequences again from where we started out, not to what is right or wrong.
This is why it is a world game conversation, because basically Buckminster Fuller would say you can't learn less. I would reinterpret it as I'm either going to succeed or I'm going to create some very good intellectual property for somebody else.
Yeah. I love this. So now we come to the point where I would like to ask you, can you please tell us, no, it's not a question then, it's like something I would like you to express for express for those who are watching in and follow this first 47 minutes. So what is coming in the next minute here? Can you give us a brief overview of your work and what you're doing? And why?
I'm playing the world game in my own way. And I believe the best way to do that is to involve as many people. How that's particularly expressed is by the conversation we've been having called Is There Enough?, which I would share with you and report to the audience over 3 years in 25 countries, thousands of hours of conversation. When people begin to examine together what enough is, they begin to find more capability of collaboration than they otherwise would. I like to think of it as if you could go into a phone booth, in the old days of the phone booth, you come out Superman. You go into the phone booth of the conversation of Is There Enough? You come out the other side more capable of agreement than you were before. And I don't just mean consensus and
no, it's beyond consensus.
Absolutely.
I probably because consensus
with measurement. That's right.
Consensus is what you told me before. I would do my very best, blah blah blah, to do this but the intent is even more than consensus.
It is. I mean, we're searching for the right words, and there's thousands of new efforts around the world besides ours that I'm happy to report are all focused on how do we raise our level of collaboration in the world, and I think we need a 1,000 flowers blooming on the topic. So this is one part of our work, and I'm writing a book coming out in 2023, which is called The First Agreement, which is the first agreement is to have one. And to start from there, but there's a breakdown of basically this choice we have to continue being warriors or continue admitting we're warriors, like an alcoholic admits they're an alcoholic after they stop drinking, right? So that even Michael and I, who couldn't be more aligned on so many levels, I'm sure somewhere along the line we'll have some conflict of interest.
Yes.
How will we handle that? And how do we get ourselves out of our conflict and into collaboration will be a challenge in this moment. And so if we create that orientation, so the conversation of Is There Enough? Is designed to be experienced by people, and some of them will help us establish a culture of humanity, we feel, through the symbolism of the treaty. And we want to line up 50,000 signatures in our pre-launch period of this treaty, just people getting in line and waiting for that. And when we release it in 2023, we want to make a big splash to the mainstream media that this is the first treaty in history to be signed by individuals, not nations. And therefore we think is the last treaty we would ever need to sign. And if we can exceed 50,000 on the first day, we think we can blow that up onto the mainstream media and make 1 million in a year and 100 million in 5 years.
Wow.
That's Is There Enough? And then the other side of what we do is a business, which is a social impact business called Impact Launchpad. And we are seeking to innovate the way we finance social impact projects.
And that's really something we need, I
guess. It is
is
something we need because we don't have a lot of, again, we talked about time being a construct, but by the way we construct time in the next 28 years from now, by 2050, we are projected to have 1 billion people homeless and without a passport. And we know what we need to spend in order to deal with that problem, and we're not spending it. No government is spending it. No international order is spending it. And it isn't that there's a lack of capital for it. It's just there's a lack of agreement on how to
Yeah.
use the capital,
Yeah.
which is why
Yeah,
you can
yeah,
see
yeah.
we ended up becoming something of an
I
agreement
really
culture.
love this. I really love this. I just thought of something that I can give away right now.
Please.
It's a dialogue or discussion. Not. Yeah, I don't know if the right word is discussion or dialogue. It happened a couple of years ago between me and two of my friends and colleagues. It was an early morning. We were gathering at 6 o'clock in the morning. It's don't ask why, but we did that of some reason, and we were supposed to talk a little bit about symbols, and. Again, a worldview connected to symbols would say the Western worldview would say that symbols are just a representation of something.
Right.
So quite quickly we came into okay, so it's not just the representation; it's also what it is. It's
Right.
If you choose the, it's not you cannot have like an arbitrary symbol. You have to have a symbol representing really, not only representing to be what it is. Okay, so in this case, we're talking about the ship, and we also talked about the tree as a symbol for something, and so on. So, and then we came up with the idea that it's not only actually, the symbol is not only what it is, it's also what every person or every agent, conscious agent, could believe it is. So a symbol could be more than what it was supposed to represent in the beginning. So first step, the Western world step is that it represents something.
Right.
Then the next step is that it is what it is. The symbol is also what it is, and then it could be anything you put into it. So this idea of calling it a symbol could diminish it if you just have taken the first step. But if you realize that it is so exactly what you said, this is the last agreement.
The
we
last
have.
treaty we would ever need to
Yeah,
sign
yes.
as a treaty.
Yeah, and the question then from me in my own head is, didn't we already sign it when we came onto this planet?
Well, here's the question between people and conditions of life,
Mm.
right? Because you can't change people.
No.
I've tried.
Okay. Okay.
Okay. But you can change the conditions by which people exercise their choices in. If you expand people's choices or make them aware of choices
Yes,
like
yes,
we've
yes,
been
yes,
talking
yes.
to, now life has a chance to change. Whether people will take that door or not is another story. But I try to put my discipline of focus into how can I create the conditions for people to make better choices, because I think choices that are made together are what we call agreement, which is why this treaty is sort of laid out this way, and it's decentralized. Like if we're after 100 million certificates to be issued, we think of it as a constitution of humanity, a simple one paragraph constitution of humanity. And if 100 million people sign it and 10 million decide they're no longer going to abide by it, the other 90 million are still doing what they're doing, right?
Yeah.
Or if we only got 100,000 who ever signed it in its history and it never succeeded to its 100 million, that's 100,000 people that will have gone through the consideration of this conversation, plus another probably 10 times that many of the conversations that it took before those people even signed it, right?
And that impact is,
For
enormous.
those who follow the Sustainable Development Goals, this is a SDG 17. It's how to create collaboration around the other 16 goals, basically.
It's actually a practice more than a goal.
I have not thought of it that way, but in the context of this conversation and the distinction we're making, it is in fact a practice. And you've just clued me into something that's bothered me for a few years, which is, why is anybody interested in this? Like, because it's kind of so simple, right? I mean, when it first occurred...
Yeah, but why shouldn't it? I mean, again, isn't every... I would say, again, not simple. It's natural.
Okay. I will live with that.
Because when you say simple, it's like we have taken away the complexity of it. So it's still complex.
It is.
Yes.
Yes.
But
because it stimulates some neuron somewhere.
Yeah,
yes.
but I mean complex in the sense of not being reduced.
Right.
It's intense. It's alive. It's all of the things that what I would say is complex or complexity, and we shouldn't reduce it. We should say it's like not simple. It's complex and it's natural. Do you understand?
I do. It's given it a qualitative understanding that I appreciate greatly.
You put a lot of quality into it by
you.
saying that, and a lot of inherent power as a complex system. For instance, a life or an organization or a society, it has a lot of inherent power within it. But as soon as you reduce it and put it up as a goal, then you have reduced it to a simple system. And when you do that, you also lose the power of the complexity, power of the system.
Right.
So now you can.
So it's not simple; it's accessible, is what I would say.
Yes.
Is the distinction. Yeah.
Great.
Accessible is a good
Accessible.
word.
Yeah, it's a really good word. Yeah, I like that.
It's suddenly the possibility that it wasn't before. Like you opened a door or you made a new door.
So let me ask you then: could we consider this treaty kind of like a certain kind of vote of humanity, of global citizens exercising a support for a certain kind of culture? It's not too far.
I
from that, right?
I understand. I actually thought a lot of it on this. I had an idea a couple of years ago, which I realized that probably more people around the world have had. The idea was not to invent a new system. It was more or less to go through all the religions and all the various civilizations and then map up the practices. We can call the practices, or we can call it principles.
Sure.
And see how many of those, maybe plenty
That we
of them.
all agree on.
Yes, and then call that. We can call it that we agree on them, because agreement is actually what it is. Yeah, it works, and then we have the same terminology here. So then we would probably we could work from that level instead of what is separating us or what is different. That is a common agreement, or common denominator, or a common ground.
Yeah, it's along this same set of activities of conversation we were talking about, of training your mind to see sameness before difference, right? Same
So the
on
idea,
a global level.
so the idea was that not inventing a new system, a new UN or whatever.
Right.
Instead, take what we already have and see what is the common ground or the basic agreement, and then you could do this actually by hand in the first step, and then in the next step you could use AI or something like that to have it updated as we go.
Sure. You talked about, Michael, in your workshop recently. You put up that quote from Buckminster Fuller that you never change things by fighting the existing reality. You build a new one that makes the old one obsolete, something like that. And you know what you were just saying sort of led me on to that, and now I've forgotten why I came over here. You remind me of what we were just talking about. On the global system, is that the world game and synergy both are about leveraging existing systems. They're not about tearing down anything. Right?
No.
The idea that the system is all way too far gone and we need to tear it down. This is a war mentality.
Yeah, like we have to destroy it and put it through the grinder.
Yeah, because it's too far gone. It's all screwed up, and we have to tear it down.
Yeah,
and
we
start
can't,
all over
and we
again.
can't blame the system, as we are the system.
Yes, my friend.
Because as when we blame the system, we say that it's someone else's fault. It's someone else should have, they shouldn't, or they haven't done, or whatever it is, and we put the blame on. At the same second or same moment as you put a blame on someone, you're actually taking the power from yourself, because you say it's someone else's fault.
Victimhood.
Well, we're bridging these two centuries, right? Like, because today there was released a trove of documents from the United States about the JFK assassination.
Okay.
Which I was affected by. I was a little kid, but I was alive, and my whole family was very, very impacted from it. So it was a big, big moment of my life. And what has been released is clearly not everything that was there, even now, 60 years later. But what has been released so clearly would have inflamed the country about the worry about the deep state institutions that they now falsely worry about today, in my view, falsely. that we have this sort of healthy mistrust, I think generally healthy mistrust of institutions as if they're different from us because of central power like that. And the difference now is we all have the technology to create our own power.
Yep.
Right, we have government systems that
Yeah,
have
yes,
evolved.
yes, yes. We're
And
right
I don't
now,
just mean
yeah,
blockchain,
no.
blockchain for sure,
No,
but
no,
other things too.
But even in this small little room we're sitting, we're right now doing something that wasn't even imaginable. You can go back. I
Walter
don't know.
Cronkite in the CBS Evening News when I grew up was the big deal, and he didn't have the power you have sitting
No,
right here
no,
in
no,
this
no.
little room.
It's
He
almost
couldn't even
ridiculous.
control his own narratives.
That's true as well. That's true.
So
as
it's
well.
almost ridiculous how much power we actually have in our hands every day.
So I'm going to ask it this way: is if it is a vote. So let's make this comparison. If you ran a country, let's say Sweden. Okay, we're here in Sweden recording this, right? Let's say you were is it a prime minister or president here, or both?
We have a prime minister and we have a king.
And you have a king, I remember.
Yeah.
But not a
Okay. So yes.
president. So you're a parliamentary
yeah,
system with a prime
parliamentary
minister.
system. So the
As
king
we are in
is
Canada.
is reduced
Figurehead.
to the symbol representing something.
There you go.
But it's a nice person and so on. So it's like important symbol but we have a parliament and we have a prime minister.
So if your prime minister had a desire to make a policy to get people to vote more than they do, and here I think in Sweden the voting participation is very high compared to the rest of the world, but let's say in the United States, which is about 50%, a little under 50%, and they wanted to increase it to like 70%. Here's my idea for a policy. Pay everybody to vote. Pay them $100. Like they attend a market research focus group. They get paid $100. You pay them $100 to go vote.
Yeah.
The people who are all about voter ID will love it because it has to go through like a tax ID or a bank or something like that. And the people on the left are going to love it because it's helping social spending, right? If you could do that, it would spend little less than 2% of the U.S. federal budget, I figured out, which is a very good outcome.
For an election in Sweden.
Well,
No, just kidding. Just
I
kidding.
don't know about Sweden.
No.
I didn't do the numbers on
No,
Sweden, but
no.
I'm just reporting like
Yeah, I
if
understand
you
that.
had a concept to reward people for that activity, you'd have higher participation.
Yeah,
We
probably.
could probably agree.
I have to think of this. You
have to think about it.
Yeah, but it's
But
not.
it's a good
not.
idea.
Yeah, definitely. And the thing here is that it's also. It could be a really good idea. Maybe I have to think of it, and I can't produce
let's-
the answer right now. I have to contemplate
Let's
a little
combine
bit.
let's combine these two concepts then, right? Is that the treaty that we propose, the Treaty of Humanity, the last treaty we'll ever need to sign, is like a vote on a simple one-paragraph human constitution. Not the Constitution of Humanity, just a Constitution of Humanity. We'd like to see many more constitutions of humanity. But if we then had a monetization path where we could generate some revenue for the people that are signing it to reward them for their time and effort of being part of what is kind of a giant social research project, if you think about it also like that, right? And if we rewarded them for that and we had a model for that, we could also create revenue for the House so that we could actually perpetrate this campaign, which will basically ask the question of is there enough to over 1 billion people in order to get 100 million to sign the treaty. And that's 1 billion worldviews changed by just starting off a little campaign that can then feed itself as people come through the technology, and that in and of itself gives more money to the organization to go out and bring more people into the organization, and so on and so on and so on. It takes about $50,000 to kick that off. That's all it takes.
So, yeah, I just want to mention when you hear a thing like that, you can pay people to vote, and said we can't afford that because when there's a common misconception about money,
Yes.
money doesn't go away unless you literally burn it. So
Which sometimes it's a good idea to do when you're creating
Yeah.
manipulation and value.
yeah. But if you give it to people, they will spend it on something, and then you get money flow, and that's what we need. So. And when we do this to a lot of people, we get the right type of money flow, perhaps. we don't know, but we
This is a good point. Like you say to me sometimes, like that money is not necessarily your arena, but you understand money really well.
I've studied money a lot. I've watched hundreds of hours of YouTube videos of economics and money and things like that. So
Well, this will probably interest you then as well, and maybe you're aware from the videos you're looking at that some effort in this is already underway. But we think that it's possible to produce universal income without a government or taxes based on the principle of what you've just described. And the idea that we have for it is not the only one out there, but the one that's come to us has been a client of ours that wants us to build software and development platform and a marketing effort to basically persuade people that it would be all right to have a society where you were not required to work for a living.
For a living.
It's not a
it's
small question to ask people.
No.
Right?
But you can reframe it a little bit, just a little bit, for a while, and see if it opens up new doors or new ways. Human beings are the only species that has to pay to be able to live.
Fair enough, right?
So,
but when you talk to somebody on the conservative side who believe in the individual work ethic as
I understand
part of what survival was made from.
I understand
When you talk about the fact that human beings are the only species that don't have to pay to live or whatever, in their mind they're hearing lazy people.
But again, just let me finish what I'm.
Sure. Sorry to interrupt.
No problem. Just so we finish that up, because it's another way to look at it. It's actually the same thing that you're saying right now, because a universal basic income.
I'm leaving the word basic out intentionally.
Okay.
Universal income.
Okay. Never mind. Income is something that then would be a concept to do exactly what I just said. You have like enough to be able to live and work and having food on table doesn't need to be connected. I mean, food on table is like living, and then you can have various what do you call that? Qualities? No, what did you call that?
We started this conversation talking about standard of living, right?
Thanks. That was the word I was searching for. Thanks.
And what you think is the standard of living for you that's sufficient, and what I think is for me
probably
is going to be different.
Yeah.
Right? So how could we ever define basic?
Okay.
So we need a system where the person can set their own income and it actually work.
Yeah.
And so
what is enough for you?
Me?
Yeah, no, but that's not
you
not
mean
in the
generally each person deciding.
And
they have to go through some mechanisms, but basically the way the economic system works is that people are equipped with money to spend to support their lifestyle, but if they want to accumulate wealth, which is still possible to do in this system, they have to perform work and service for that. So you give them money that they can buy what they need to buy, educate themselves, start a business. They want to work with a nonprofit. They could do this, but everything's taken. If they want to go be,
you're a genius. Now I said it.
Or hunt bees, or do beekeeping or whatever.
Yep.
That's their choice to do what they do, and it's based on an idea that human beings are more contributors.
Yep.
Than they are consumers.
Yes.
On the whole.
Yes, and right now we're reduced to consumers.
Yes.
So we have to have this capability back.
Yes, but should you have to work to consume, or could you just consume and then you create value and wealth for people who want to consume, and now you have buyers who can buy your goods and services because they're equipped with the cash to spend. It's a brilliant system. And it took me a while to understand the brilliance of the system, but once I understood it, then I went, people are just not going to get this, right? And so I started doing research with people and asking, kind of the way we asked the Is There Enough question research. And I said to people this, I put this question to them. I haven't done this on Clubhouse yet, but I'm about to do it on Clubhouse. And I said, tell me, if I could prove to you that it was economically feasible, technically capable, I've already done the research and worked it out, that we could make universal income without it having to affect you, your taxes, or taking any money out of your pocket, would you be okay with a society where you weren't required to work for a living? Honestly, gentlemen, I have never seen anything hit the emotional center than this question, right? I saw 3 sisters have a conversation and work out a 20-year like rift in the family with tears over this question.
Wow.
Yes, it shocked me, right? I've had more people want to follow me on Clubhouse whenever I've mentioned this than anything I talk about, because it's like the holy grail: is there enough money? Because there is
or
enough money.
time.
Well, yeah, no, it is.
or whatever
Yeah.
concept.
Time seems ethereal
Yeah.
compared to the cash thing,
Yeah.
though, right?
Yeah, yeah,
if
yeah,
you
yeah,
can
yeah,
figure
yeah.
out a way that
Yeah.
everybody can have enough cash,
Yeah.
please.
Please. Funny. And when you look at nature, that's what I used in the terminology of being natural. I mean, nature never said there is only 3 of you who can have apples or whatever. I mean, it has like I wouldn't say abundance, but I would say enough.
Well, this
For
is
everyone
the,
on
this is
all
the-
levels.
This is the transcendent question: is it about scarcity and abundance, which are both polar opposites, or is
Yeah.
it about the thing that's enough?
Yes.
Now,
I love the distinction here.
We're all living in a world, though, with colleagues we respect, both of us, who have very accurate data of disasters that are coming and that are already baked into the climate. I've talked about 1 billion people being homeless right here on this call. And there's a 1972 report from MIT called The Limits to Growth that is still referred to today because their predictions of what would be happening now were not as bad as they are. So there are people who follow this line of thinking that we're all going off a cliff, who use that as proof that we're going off a cliff and saying we have to stop growing or we have to depopulate. Right? And this is the opposite of treating the human being as ultimate value. Right?
And there is also another story, and that is that the world of the planet is
Finite
fine without
resources.
finite resources, maybe or may not. I mean, it's like a limited space in universe. I don't know, but what I'm thinking of is more like that. The planet is better without humans.
Or without humans.
Yeah,
Yes,
so
yes.
that's another story which I don't believe in.
I'm an Al Gore trained climate reality activist. And I was trained in Atlanta with about 4,000 people. And a 19-year-old kid got up and talked about how much my generation had polluted his world and how human beings were a parasite on the planet. And everybody clapped for him, and he cried tears, and I felt badly for him. And when I look at Greta, looking at the camera and saying, and your fairy tales of growth, right? And I see her shaking like that. I admire her greatly, but there's no fairy tale of growth. Nature is about growth. We have to figure, as Buckminster Fuller said, how to eventually do everything eventually with nothing.
but-
how to
but-
do more with less, not how to do less with less.
No, I understand that. But what I can see in that conversation still, or in that terminology, is that growth is interesting for something that is small and need to be a little bit bigger. For instance, when I was a kid, growing was the concept.
Right.
Now I would say growing would be not the concept. I would say sustaining what I already have is maybe a concept, or developing in other ways. So growth and also if you have the backside of growth, when you got a cancerogenous growth, which is like expanding without any I wouldn't use the word limits here because that's not what I'm looking for. Without any intent or any reasonable reason. Do you understand what I'm looking here for?
I do. I like to put it on this simple question to people. Have we ever run out of I have 2 ways to ask this question. Have we ever run out of a resource on planet Earth that we didn't replace with a better one? Number 1.
No, okay.
So far.
Should I answer this?
Please.
Okay, so we have run out or used
or used up enough that we moved on to the next one?
I don't really get the question here, because what I'm thinking of is
I mean, we all run on energy. We're
yeah.
not running on whale oil.
no. Okay,
You
so but we're still taking up from
We're still extracting. Yes.
and we're not right now paying the price more or less for what
That's
it's
true.
what it's worth, because we only pay the price to get, for instance, oil up, not the price to put it down again, and not the price for
Agreed.
so.
But that's not my question.
No, I understand
Yeah?
that that's not your question.
My
but
question
I didn't
is,
really understand
like
the question.
the question is because we hear people that we all respect referring to, we all know we live on a planet of finite resources as if it's a fact, and I'm saying I don't see a fact that supports that. I asked the question another way: have we ever had a migration of people from one part of the earth to another part of the earth by whatever means, war or natural exodus or famine or any other reason, where the destination country they ended up in was poorer because of that migration so far, right?
Okay.
We've had cultural upheaval. We've had fear that there's not enough jobs, not enough housing, not enough social services, yada, yada. And then 10 years later or 15 years later in the modern world, and I think it's pretty true in the ancient world as well, wherever the people went to, they made an economy, right?
And this is also happening if for instance, if you have a small city and there is a big company or industry, and this industry it has to shut down, and often, I wouldn't
That's
say
the opposite. Yes.
not every single occasion, but sorry. Maybe I should just I'll leave it to you now, Michael.
You're both talkers and I'm a listener, so so that's why.
I've seen you talk.
Yeah, I've seen it. Yeah, but first of all, we have done things that we have overfished certain seas.
Thanks.
We overfishing the Baltic Sea right now. We run out of the fish stocks are very down, but still this year we upped the quota instead of down it. Even we know we're running out of fish in the Baltic Sea.
That's a good counterexample, especially when we talk about species.
Yeah, we couldn't agree to lower the quota, even we know that the fish stocks are down 50%.
Right. Yeah, that's a really good example. Because if you're looking for country, this is an extremely interesting thing, because fishing in itself, you don't pay to fish.
We don't pay the fish. No, we don't pay each other for it. We just take it.
No, we just take it out. It's like as it was a finite infinite resource, we just take it out, and we, for instance, if we grow potatoes on the ground, we pay for the ground to pay, or we pay the seeds, and we pay a lot of things we pay for, but not the fish. So it's super. Yeah. We have to add that to the agreement.
We do.
That's a very, very prominent agreement list we have to get on.
You know, it's so interesting you bring this up, because there are people who are my brothers and sisters in the environmental movement who will not sign our treaty because it doesn't expressly express this point about nature. And my answer to them is that I am looking for the most accessible, genuine agreement that everybody can make, and from that audience can be more capable of making a climate agreement. So we're like an interim step.
Yep.
Right?
Again, the common ground.
That's what I'm talking about. Like today, and I respect them greatly, the Buckminster Fuller Institute has reframed the world game from 100% of humanity to 100% of life. Right? And I've interacted with several members of the Buckminster Fuller Institute community, and they all have a problem with the fact that I am not, to the ones I've met so far, of that we're not on side with 100% of life. And I admire that, because, you know, that their position, because as Michael's pointing out, when a species is gone, it's gone, right? And you know, you're saying we're fishing those stocks. If we are gone and there's none left, if we can make a new agreement about how to preserve them, then they don't have to be gone.
Yeah.
Right? And I think that's where the focus needs to be. And I think, you know, this idea that I I can't sign your agreement unless you agree with 100% of everything.
Yeah, and
It's
100%
sort of the
of-
reason why we don't have agreement.
Yeah.
Right?
That's interesting because again, consensus is not the goal.
It's action.
Yes.
And recognizing that certain kinds of conversation will produce more action, and other kinds of conversation will produce a lot of blame.
Yeah,
conflict.
definitely.
Right.
Yeah, but also coming back to what we talked about earlier, like and coming back to my conversation yesterday. For people listening now, you can watch that. But it says society is ultimately a collective value creation organism or something like that, and we have created so much surplus now that we have to give people what India calls jobs for bad robots, that bullshit jobs.
Right.
Some call it. People go to work just
Just
to
to
earn a salary
Right.
and doing things that consumes a lot more resources than they produce. So they don't contribute value. They are a negative input value just to get a salary.
Which is the great idea for universal income for those
Yeah.
people too. Like Bucky
Yeah.
Fuller talked
Yeah.
about this. In
So we
Critical
don't.
Path.
We can still pay them, but they don't have to consume more than they
Right.
produce, especially energy. That is so.
We would save money
They-
doing that.
Yeah, yeah, and coming back to that, like the whole understanding that if we pay people to do or not pay people to do things, we still need people to go wake up in the morning. There's gonna be no bread in the bread store if someone baker doesn't get up in the morning to pay it. So if we think that all people will get lazy and lie on the sofa and expect everyone else to bake bread for them, that's not going to happen, and that's not what people are.
It's so interesting that you raised this, because when I went out and did that research and I asked people, would you be okay with a society in which people didn't have to work?
Yeah.
It boiled down to, do you think people are lazy or do you think they are creative?
Yeah.
Right? Because I think the
So
greatest suffering-
after a week or two on the sofa, you're gonna say, wait a minute, I have to bake bread.
This is how you and I see the world.
Yeah.
But there are people out there who totally believe that they're responsible, but everybody else is a lazy ass. There are people who believe this.
And there are lazy people, and that's okay.
And that's okay, too.
They're still lazy in today's system, so and they will be lazy in this system too. So
And they'll
that
get-
won't change.
Yeah, you know what I say on this is, we can agree on this. Some people will be what you call lazy. Some people will take advantage of the opportunity to go to school, start a job, start a business, whatever they'll do, right? Write a book, travel the world, right? You just don't know how many are going to fit in each category. We can agree on the categories, but we can disagree on how many fit in the category.
We have to test it first. We have to go for the
Exactly. Exactly what I say.
So I would say maybe it's time to wrap up this fantastic conversation with a small agreement, and that it's time for wrapping up. Is that okay?
Yeah,
It's
we are done.
first step. Yeah,
This
yeah.
is great. Thank you for
thank you very
all
much.
the
And
inspiration.
you mentioned that it was possible to
Pre-register.
register. How
Yes.
do we do that?
Yes. We have a survey on our website. And if you go through the survey, we automatically give you a spot in our pre-registration.
Oh, okay.
If you don't want to do the survey and you've heard enough with what I've had to say, you can just go there, click on Treaty, and put your name into the pre-registration request, and we'll honor it soon enough. We hope that you'll look at our survey, because it really makes a slide-by-slide argument for why does humanity even need a treaty at all, and why we have framed it the way we have framed it.
Okay. So what is the web address or URL? Do you
That would
know?
be isthereenough.org.
Is there
Enough.
enough.org? I'm writing it here, and right now, is this www?
You don't need that anymore.
Is there?
That
is
was last
there-
decade.
Yeah.
Is there last? Okay. Is there enough.org? So I put this now on is there enough.org, and just check so I spelled everything right. Can you check, or do you have glasses or something?
I'll put my glasses on.
Do you see? Is there enough.org? Is that?
This is it.
Yeah. Okay. So by that, I would say thank you, Michael, and thank you, Daniel, for joining for this fantastic conversation. Never-ending story almost. We have been talking for almost 1.5 hours, and and right now I'm not lazy but very tired.
Yeah.
So
Thank
anything,
you so much.
anything the two of you want to like short end or ending this conversation with, or anything you like to express that hasn't been already said, or?
Yeah. I'll take this opportunity to plug my favorite activity that is a form of wisdom gym, where we talk about things like the meaning of agreement, the meaning of value, the meaning of wealth. And it's a conversation exercise. We do it every Sunday. We can do special conversations, and Daniel will be at my home tomorrow, so we will probably talk about maybe agreement, as what is agreement, and we tilt and turn it back and forth for an hour, and we get new insights and new perspective, what a word means, so we can use it better.
And what do you call this activity?
We call it the Glassbead Games,
Mhm.
and the general name for it is Wisdom Gym, and that's what we need more of.
The Glassbead Games. I've enjoyed it very much. I've been on it before. It's
Yeah.
fantastic.
Mm.
Anything you want to add, Daniel?
I just want to say that sitting here and affecting into demonstration things that we just generally talk about and think about is what makes it all able for people to continue to work with it. And this is a form of agreement itself, just
Yeah.
everybody here listening.
Yeah.
So
They have agreed to 1.5 hours of the life.
They've made it this
if they
far.
made us this far,
If
yeah.
they've made it
And
this
if
far,
you
thank
done,
you.
if you're done, if you really made this far, thank you very much for listening in to Radio Intentional Decisions and this series called Global Consciousness. And thank you very much, Daniel and Michael, for joining into this conversation. And take care.
Thank you so much,
Bye.
Stellan.
Bye.
Bye.